Hello everyone, my name is Nivedita. Today I am here with you to discuss regarding the topic consumer surplus. So let us quickly see what are the topics that I'll be going to cover in this session. The first topic is introduction, followed by meaning, law of diminishing marginal utility, consumer surplus theory, assumptions of consumer surplus theory, limitations of consumer surplus theory, and last, conclusion of consumer surplus. So let us see the first topic, that is the introduction. The concept of consumer surplus is derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility. As per the law, as we purchase more of a commodity, its marginal utility reduces. Since the price is fixed, for all units of the goods we purchase, we get extra utility. The extra utility is nothing but the consumer surplus. So, let us next going to see what actually the consumer surplus mean. According to Alfred Marshall, British economist defines consumer surplus as excess of the price that a consumer would be willing to pay rather than go without a commodity over that which he actually pays. According to him, the equation of consumer surplus is the price a consumer is ready to pay less the price he actually pays. The consumer is in an equilibrium when the marginal utility is equal to the price. That is, he purchases those numbers of units of a good that at which the marginal utility is equal to the price. Now the price is fixed for all the units, hence he gets surplus for all the units except the one at the margin. This extra utility is nothing but the consumer surplus. So, I'm telling you regarding the law of diminishing marginal utility and all. So, let us see what actually the law of diminishing marginal utility means. According to the economist Alfred Marshall, the more you consume a certain commodity, the lower the satisfaction derived from each additional unit of consumption. For example, if you buy one apple for rupees, for not for rupees, for dollar 0.50, you're not willing to pay more for the second apple. At the same time, the utility derived from the consuming the second apple is lower than it was for the first apple. This concept is described in the table as given below. I'll be going to discuss with you that. And also, as I said, the consumer surplus is nothing but utility minus price into quantity. As I said, I'll be showing you the table. This is the table. Here you can see there are four columns, that is the quantity consumed, marginal utility, market price, consumer surplus. Here there are 5 units. The marginal utility for each unit varies, but the total is 150. Whereas the market price is stable, that is 10 rupees. For example, if the quantity consumed is 1 unit, the marginal utility is 50 and the market price is 10. So the overall consumer surplus is 50, that is marginal utility minus market price. So 50 minus 10 is 40. Whether when we come to the second row, that is quantity consumed is 2 units, the marginal utility will be decreased to 40 and the market's price remains stable. That is 40 minus 10 is nothing but the consumer surplus is 30. So overall, 5 units, if a person consumes 5 units, the marginal utility will be 50 and the market price will be 50. So 150 minus 50, the overall consumer surplus will be 100. This is all about the consumer surplus example. So let us going to see the consumer surplus theory. This is the graphical representation presented by Alfred Marshall in his measures of consumer surplus. Here you can see in this figure that x-axis measures the amount of commodity, while the y-axis measures the price of a marginal utility. MU, you can see this MU near x-axis. It represents the marginal utility curve sloping downwards. This indicates that as the marginal utility falls, the consumer purchases more units of a commodity and vice versa. And here you can see this OP that is in the y axis. This OP is the price of a unit of the commodity. The consumer is in equilibrium only when he purchases OQ in units. In other words, we can say that when marginal utility is equal, it is equal to the price of OP. The qth unit, you can see the qth unit in the y-axis. This qth unit does not hold any surplus since the price and the marginal utility is equal. However, for the purchase of all the units before the qth unit, the marginal utility is greater than the price, offering a surplus to the customer. In this figure, the total utility is equal to the area under the marginal utility curve, like up to Q, that is OD and RQ. However, for price OP, the consumer pays OPRQ. Hence, he derives extra utility equal to DPR, which is nothing but a consumer surplus. So let us see the assumptions of the consumer surplus. The first assumption is utility is a measurable entity. That means that the consumer surplus theory suggests that the value of utility can be measured. Under the Marshallian economics, utility can be expressed as a number. For example, the utility derived from an apple is 15 units or 10 units. And the next point is no substitutes available. It means that there are no available substitutes for any commodity under the consideration. Third point is ceteris paribus. It states that customers or consumers' taste, preference, and income do not change in any of the quantity or commodity. The fourth is marginal utility of money remains constant. It states that the utility derived from the income of a consumer is constant. That is, any change in the amount of money a consumer does not change the amount of utility they derive from it. It is required because without it, money cannot be used to measure utility. Fifth point is law of diminishing marginal utility. This point states that the more of a product or a service is consumed, the lower the marginal utility is derived from the consuming each extra unit. Last point, that is the independent marginal utility. The marginal utility derived from the product being consumed is not affected by the marginal utility derived from the consuming similar goods or services. For example, if you consume orange juice, the utility derived from it not affected by the utility derived from apple juice or grape juice. So, the next is the limitations of the theory. The first limitation is it is difficult to measure the marginal utilities of different units of a commodity consumed by a person. Hence, the price is measurement of consumer surplus is not possible. The second limitation is for necessary goods, the marginal utilities of the first few units are infinitely large. Hence, the consumer surplus is infinite for such goods. The availability of the substitute also affects the consumer surplus. The fourth point is deriving the utility scale for prestigious goods like diamonds is very difficult. Fifth, we cannot measure the consumer surplus in terms of money. This is because The marginal utility of money changes as a customer makes purchases, a customer or a consumer makes purchases, and as stock of money diminishes. The last point is this concept is acceptable only on the assumption that we can measure utility in terms of money or otherwise. Many modern economists are against this concept. Last is the conclusion. Here we come to the conclusion part of this consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is a good way to measure the value of a product or a service and is an important tool used by governments in the Marshallian system of welfare economics to formulate tax policies. It can be used to compare the benefits of two commodities and is often used by monopolies when deciding the price to change for its product or its product. So this is all about that we discussed about the topic consumer surplus. I hope everyone had a brief introduction or description regarding the topic consumer surplus. Thank you.